know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you from beautiful BC and out here in Florida, this is Lifter Valley 2.0. My name is Kevin, and if someone asks me if I'm seeing someone, I always assume they're talking about a psychiatrist. Joining me as usual is the team that doesn't know if you got your opinion, but hopes you kept your teeth. Guys, welcome back.
We got to start laughing at Kevin's jokes more often.
Yeah, you guys are never laughing at my jokes.
Yeah, but then...
Or at least have a script to tell people.
Add laughter in the background after that. You guys have no sense of humor whatsoever.
I don't.
I feel like if I laugh at Kevin's jokes and they're not funny, I'm not being authentic. So
thank you. I'm here for Thursday. And this show is brought to you by our patrons. You too can become a patron. Just go to patreon.com/LATV and help us grow the show. Today, guys, we'll be the second half of the show. We'll be talking to Professor Edwin Hodge, and we'll be talking about the whole incel phenomenon. But first, as usual, let's do usual chit chat. That should be interesting. All right, perfect.
Yeah. I hope they're not too hard on me with the whole insult thing. I don't want to feel personally attacked. I'm just kidding.
I don't think you fall into that category. Guys, we are in mid to late February. Don't know if you guys remember last year. You guys remember that Canadian trucker convoy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I blocked it out, but thank you for reminding me.
I was picking my daughter up today, and I still saw one of them on an overpass with a bunch of upside-down Canadian flags. Oh, yeah. It's still protesting mandates and Trudeau and whatever else they're upset about.
You know,
they don't like men dating men? Is that what it is?
That's right. It sucks because you know what? Whenever you saw a truck down the road with a Canadian flag or something like that, you're like, oh, a nice little moment of patriotism. Now, whenever I see one, I'm thinking, oh, it's one of those anti-vaxxer idiots. It's like, it sucks. It's actually changed the paradigm here in Canada. Well, anyway, at the time, there was a right-wing takeover of the platform that's not even supported by most truckers to try to protest the Canadian government because it was COVID mandate and restrictions. At the time, after weeks of disruption from the crazies, the Justin Trudeau government invoked what they call the Emergencies Act, and that was done on February 14th, 2022, which gave powers to the government to essentially quash down that unruly protest. At the time, right-wingers called it an act of, quote, seizing power, and it would lead to communism.
Yeah.
Okay.
It did. You guys are communists now. What? You guys aren't communists.
Are you communists?
They're completely okay when left-wing protesters, like protesting pipelines, get arrested for violating the law. But when it's their own people violating the law, well, then all of a sudden it's a communist country and Trudeau's Hitler.
Yeah, it's very transparent, honestly.
By invoking the act, the federal government gave law enforcement extraordinary powers to remove and arrest the protesters and gave itself the power to freeze the finances of those connected to the protests. Now, the temporary emergency powers also gave authorities the ability to commandeer tow trucks to remove the protesters and vehicles from the streets of the capital. And this is exactly what happened. So once it was over, the Justin Trudeau government just gave back the powers as it was supposed to do, debunking the right-wing propaganda fears as usual. What you might not know is that written in the law is that the invocation of the Emergencies Act automatically triggers a detailed report on the government's action while it's being used. And that report just came in. So this was done by an independent commissioner, Justice Paul Rouleau, and he made 56 recommendations. And he said that basically the federal government met very high threshold needed to invoke the Emergencies Act last winter, citing a failure in policing and federalism. Quote, lawful protest descended into lawlessness, culminating in a national emergency, he wrote in his highly anticipated report tabled Friday at the House of Commons. I continue here. Invocation of the Emergencies Act is a drastic move, but it is not a dictatorial one. So he also rejected the protesters claiming that it was a peaceful protest, akin to a celebration, while trucks barred the streets of Ottawa for over a month, blowing their horns all day and night. Quote, in my view, there was credible and compelling information supporting a reasonable belief that the definition of a threat to the security of Canada was met, Rouleau wrote in his executive summary, which runs more than 200 pages. The full report is 10 times that length, so 2,000 pages. Justice Rouleau also chastises the right-wing government of Ontario for inaction, which forced the hand of the federal government. During the COVID-19 pandemic, foreign state actors, he says, had significant success spreading false information about COVID-19, public health measures, and vaccines, done as a mean to sow mistrust in democratic governments, said a report. And this is what exactly we've been saying on this show for years now. All the stuff you hear from Fox News that is coming across the border into Canada, this is a result of that. At least that's so in his report. Foreign state actors had significant success spreading false information about COVID-19.
Yeah,
and you know
definitely
it's false
successful.
when.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's false because, also in the news this week, a bunch of text got released from Fox showing internal communications, showing that they knew that everything that they were spreading were lies, and they were complaining about pushback from journalists on the network, and then it's but they get on air and it's we speak the truth, everybody else is lying. It's meanwhile they don't even believe the same bull crap that they're spreading.
And it shows that all the stuff that Donald Trump was saying, about the stolen election, all that, they show in their internal text, they themselves didn't believe it. It's no, this is bullshit. But it gets us ratings, so we keep on spreading that shit.
Yeah. It's what people, they give the kids what they want, Kids want a show, we give them a show.
And there's people north here of the border here though that just eat that stuff up.
Yes.
There was Canadians that actually thought we were going to lose our gas stoves, for crying out loud. It's it's just one crazy conspiracy after another.
We talked briefly about that also with Tom and Cecil in an episode recently. How they didn't. We talked briefly about the convoy, and even Cecil apologized to Canadians. That was funny. But I said,
they're all from Chicago too. That's probably right where they're at.
And I said
they should apologize.
It's one of those things that people don't seem to realize. There's a lot of American media that makes its way across here across the 49th parallel into this country, including Fox News. And there's a lot of we're seeing the same phenomenon happening here in Canada that we see in the States about these young white right-wing young men that are getting angry and believing all this bullshit.
Hey, come on, man! I'm right here. Come on.
I think what made it really obvious was during the pandemic, you'd be arguing with family over some of these false conspiracies going around, and they're laying all these so-called truth bombs on you. But we're in Canada, and they're laying down all this U.S. propaganda and stats from the U.S. CDC and American doctors, and it's that's not our country. Our health organizations are saying something completely different.
Yes.
So, we're not listening, but, they're not listening to Dr. Bonnie Henry or whatever. They're listening to Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan, and and they think that it's the same amount of credibility as some shock jock on the internet is the same credibility as an actual doctor in charge of disease prevention. But
on the scale of an entire country. So it's Rogan or Anthony Fauci.
Have you guys seen the new AI thing that can mimic voices, and they got conversations between Ben Shapiro and Joe Rogan? It's all completely fake. But the AI can copy the voice and do their cadences and everything. Nobody's ever we're never gonna know what's real ever again. They're they're just gonna latch onto it oh, I'm totally vindicated. Look, Biden totally said that he's a Satanist now. Just whatever. They can.
No, we're not saying that this show is run by 5 robots that look at humans, are we?
I'm a robot in a skin
also
suit.
Too, Fox News came out a couple of years ago when they were in a lawsuit and said that Tucker Carlson, he says I'm not really reporting news, I'm an entertainment figure, because he was being sued, and Sean Hannity said pretty much the same thing. You know, that's their defense, that we're an I'm playing a character. This is an entertainment channel, but it's in the title, Fox News. It's in the fucking title, man. So it's like,
I don't understand.
No, your people think that the things you say are real. That there's caravans of migrants going to come over the border and like steal jobs, and you know, are bringing.
And I don't get that, even though this is public discourse and it's public news and it's very available information, people still can't seem to understand that. You know what? Alex Jones said he's a character, but no, he's still telling the truth somehow. I was like, Jesus Christ, dude!
I think a lot of we got to blame the public too, though. Like we got to blame the public because a lot of the time we don't digest the information that we're being given, and we're not critical of it. And what ends up happening a lot of the time is you'll have someone come up with this bogus story or an exaggerated story or misrepresentation, and then it'll go viral. Then all the news agencies will report on the reactions of this viral propaganda that isn't true. And then you'll have listeners who are like, oh, they're reporting it, so they must be true. But they're not reporting the story or confirming the story. They're just reporting people's reactions to the story and making it look like the story's real. Yeah, and that's like Fox News's bread and butter. That's how they get a lot of their stuff out there.
Well, and that was like what led to a lot of the 9/11 shit, you know, and why we have so many conspiracies surrounding 9/11 was because there was so much reporting so fast. Mm-hmm. And they were trying to get, you know, as much information out as possible as it came in. Mm-hmm. And of course, like, you're not going to get it right at first, man. It's been 5 minutes since it happened. Of course, you're not going to. And people use that as a reason to say this isn't true. And, oh, look, the main story. And they do the whole like argument from ignorance of like, as long as I can pick apart the main story, the mainstream story, that means my whatever narrative is true.
Yeah, and in Canada, it can get really frustrating too because we'll watch American news where it says something bad happens, and instantly you have a hypothetical life story of the shooter or of what's going on. In Canada, though, it's like you'll have something horrible happen. It's like, please start investigating. That's it. We'll let you know when we got more.
Well, that's not fun.
Like, we want to know what happened. Well, we don't know, so we can't tell you yet. What kind of story is that?
You got to interview the crazy homeless guy. You got to interview the crazy homeless guy. Be like, what do you think about this? What's your takeaway?
On the lighter side of news, lately we've been seeing a lot of balloons in the news. And balloons and as yet unidentified flying objects are popping all over the place at the moment, as well as 4 so far objects being shot down above the U.S. and Canada. Now, China says it's also preparing to down one on its airspace as well, while the UN Air Force as well, in I guess it's Uruguay, is investigating reports and photos of flashing lights over the Termas de Almaron area. Now, prompted by all this, the U.S. Naval Institute decided to share one of its own stories of a mysterious aircraft that came to the Navy's way in 1945, though it's some different account placed in 1941. So according to the U.S. Naval Institute, a captain aboard the USS New York spotted a sphere in the sky and ordered to be shot down, believing it was a, quote, Japanese balloon weapon. So according to
balloon weapon. They're not very effective, those balloon weapons.
It was like
sort of pop.
And, like a Mario bomb hanging on the balloon that just floats above you, then falls.
It's like from Mario Brothers, you know. It's just so whatever. Anyway,
sorry. Lanson B. Ditto, who has served on the ship, actually it was a USS Langley apparently at the time. The crew fired about 300 rounds at the object before realizing something wasn't right. About noon on December 9th, we were streaming north in open seas when a plane was sighted, he says at the incident. We opened fire at what we thought was the altitude of the plane. It didn't quite have the technology to measure the altitude correctly, so they kind of had to guess, right? We had to estimate, so they set a fuse to go off and estimate altitude. So we started out at about 5,000 feet, which is 1,524 meters for people in metric here, and could see they were coming up short. So we raced at about 7,500 feet. which is 2,286 meters. And we can see it was still short. So we raised it about to a maximum of 10,000 feet. So they're shooting these rounds at 10,000 feet, which is 3,000 meters. The team still couldn't get a good shot at it, which isn't surprising as they were aiming about 82 million kilometers too low. Yeah, pretty soon the word came out from the navigator. He said it was determined that this was the planet Venus they were shooting at.
Oh my God!
300 rounds at the planet.
Wow.
Well,
that's your opinion. Okay, let's just keep going.
Well,
let's keep going.
Everybody's got to have a goal.
You don't know.
Maybe eventually they would shoot it. You don't know.
I think in the Navy, I think in the Navy, one of the mottos to aim high. But this is
I'm just thinking, on your Venus, aim real higher, then you fire.
No? No, it's fine.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that. Helen, my dear, you got a top 10 for us?
I do.
You better have a top 10 for us.
I did homework, which was me just...
Uh-oh.
Give me 1 second. I'm a professional. Okay. Okay, so I was feeling a little down because I live in Florida and I just do living here. And as a queer person, I was like, and all this shit's like going against me and my peoples. So I wanted to feel inspired. So I did, it's a top 15, but I'm only going to do 10 of LGBT activists. So I think it was really important to talk about this. These are people that are in the past and the present that have fought for equality. So I thought that I would do this week to make myself feel better.
I have a feeling you're really going to milk this one.
I am. Anyway, so the first one is Marsha P. Johnson. If those of you who are unfamiliar with her, she was the Rosa Parks of the LGBT movement. She was an activist, drag performer, sex worker, model for Andy Warhol. She was Black, queer, and trans, and fiercely advocated for her rights and the rights of the LGBTQ community at a time when doing so was put in jeopardy. So she was one of the first people that activated Stonewall in 1969, I think it was 1968, 1968. Don't quote me on that. I'm not good with dates. And she was the one that first threw the blood that ignited the infamous Stonewall riots, which were a catalyst for the movement and inspired many pride marchers since then. In 1992, her body was found in the Hudson River. And her death was ruled a suicide, but those who knew her disagreed. There's a recent documentary, The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson, celebrates Johnson's life and investigates the mysterious circumstances of her death. So she's number one on the list. Number two is Sylvia Rivera, who's a Latina trans activist who, together with Marsha P. Johnson, co-founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionary, STAR, an organization that provided housing and other services to homeless LGBTQ youth in New York City. She was born in New York. Sylvia turned to sex work after her mother died by suicide when Rivera was just 10 years old. Rivera lived a turbulent life, struggling with drug addiction and homelessness, but Rivera was also a vocal and at times forceful advocate for change. She was once arrested attempting to climb through a window and dressed in heels into a room where the New York City Council was debating a gay rights bill. Sylvia's role in gay history was that she was one of the first people to highlight that our movement needed to be inclusive of people who did not fit into the mainstream. Carrie Davis, chief programs and policy officer at New York City's LGBTQ Community Center, told ABC News.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I know. These are awesome people.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So obviously Harvey Milk, who was the first openly gay politician to be elected in California. Milk was assassinated in 1978, but during his short tenure in office, he pushed legislation to ban discrimination based on sexual orientation in employment, housing, and public accommodations. The bill passed with one dissenting vote by Dan White, the city supervisor who would go on to shoot and kill Milk. In 2009, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger designated May 22nd, Milk's birthday, as a day of recognition for the late politician and activist.
There we go.
And that's like real quick. There's a great movie about this.
Yeah,
Sean Penn, right?
Milk.
Yeah,
Sean Penn. Yep.
But they had the craziest part of this was that White that killed him got actually a lighter sentence because he was able to make they called it the Twinkie defense, and it was he said he was too hyped up on junk food, and that was why he killed him, and they actually lightened his sentence because.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah,
I could get away with everything with that defense.
I know, right? I was like, really? We're gonna say because he doesn't drink or do anything. I was like, shit. Okay, Twinkies. Why not Twinkies?
High on Twinkie.
What the fuck? And they bought it. That's the crazy part.
I'm just looking at myself and thinking I should be a serial killer by now.
Exactly.
Right?
I just feel like Twinkie. That was an actual thing. Like if Twitter was a thing. Back when this happened, it would have been like Twinkie would have said our products do not cause homicide. There have to be a disclaimer.
They have to put that on everything.
Right.
Eating too many Twinkies might cause you some homicide.
It cause you to commit homicide. Oh my goodness.
But it just shows you how little they give a fuck about the death of people. The folks that they don't like. And it's okay, hey, look, he was on Twinkies when he killed him. So it's guys, come on. It's like
the Chewbacca defense.
I would be offended. Yeah. I would be offended to have that kind of defense. At least put me on heroin or something harsh.
Right.
A Twinkie?
PCP at the very least. PCP. Come on.
We all know he was on Blue Ribbon. So.
I mean, if we're gonna have a discussion and debate, what junk food would make you become a murderer?
Right. Plenty of people.
We could do a top 10 list next week of all the junk food killers. The Slim Jim killer.
Right, exactly.
He's snapping people and
snapping people.
The Twizzler Strangler.
Something that took Randy Savage a little too seriously. Moving on, in Edith Windsor. In 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that same-sex marriage is a constitutional right, a landmark decision that would not have been possible without Edith Windsor. After a 40-year engagement, Windsor married Thea Spider. I remember this story. Thea Spider in Canada in 2007. Spider passed away just 2 years later, leaving everything to her wife. Because the U.S. did not recognize their same-sex marriage, Windsor was asked to pay more taxes on Spider's estate far beyond what a heterosexual spouse would be required to pay on the estate of their deceased spouse. Windsor took her case to court, and in 2013, the Supreme Court ruled in her favor. 2 years later, the court expanded on that ruling in another case that led to federal recognition of same-sex marriages.
See, I just remember tweets from back then of people saying, if they legalized gay marriage in Canada or in the United States, we're moving to Canada. And it's you got it up here for years, dude.
You get it.
Sorry. No, yeah.
You know what? It's not raining cats and dogs here,
I meant Uganda.
Have you fallen into a morals depravity state?
Yeah,
where people are just crazy marrying cats.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
it's a communist country too.
Yeah, we dropped from being the highest quality of life to second, so it's obviously.
Oh no!
Oh,
we got to blame somebody. So it's either the gay community or Twinkies.
So I hate to say this to my American friends because I love you all, but just by the sheer numbers, Canada is actually a better country, demonstrably a better country than the U.S. right now.
It absolutely.
Don't say things that are true.
Right?
God,
we're in the most vacations place on the planet, bro.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We have really nice beaches here.
Number of people believing in angels.
We got Disney World, okay? So, world too, not land.
We freak out over pronouns, but we have nice beaches, okay? Anyway, so moving on, we're going to talk to Alice Nakoun. Is a human rights lawyer and LGBTQ activist from Cameroon, where homosexuality is still criminalized in a country where police officers entrap members of the LGBTQ community through text messages and beat those they perceive to be gay. Nakoun briefly fights for rights on behalf of the LGBTQ community. Though Nakoun identifies as heterosexual, she has dedicated her work to fighting for Cameroon's LGBTQ community and founded the Association for Defense of Homosexuality in 2003. Though she and her colleagues are sometimes in danger because of the work they do, Newcomb remains undeterred. These threats are in fact proof that our fight must continue, Newcomb told Amnesty International. Oh, yeah. So she's a badass. Moving on to Laverne Cox. Most people know Laverne Cox for playing Sophia Brissett on Netflix's Orange is the New Black. It's a Black trans woman, the first trans person to be nominated for an Emmy, and a proud advocate for LGBTQ rights. Cox has been outspoken about the access to health care for LGBTQ communities and has particularly championed the rights of trans people and people of color. We must lift up the stories of those most at risk, statistically trans people of color who are poor and working class, Cox wrote in a Tumblr post in 2015. I've hoped over the past few years that the incredible love I have received from the public can translate into the lives of all trans folks. And the work keeps going. So, yeah. Yay. All right. Alexia Salvador, number 7. Alexia Salvador is a trailblazer. She's a trans woman in Brazil. That's a new word. Brazil, where violence against LGBTQ people have reached an all-time high. More than 380 LGBTQ identifying people were murdered in Brazil in 2017, and 58 died by suicide, the Guardian reported. And she's a pastor. El Salvador calls herself the first transgender shepherd of Latin America, and with other trans pastors from around the world, held a groundbreaking LGBTQ-friendly mass in Cuba last year. Salvador is a mother of 2, including a trans daughter, as the first trans person to adopt a child in Brazil, according to Al Dia. I'm assuming that's a Brazilian reporting faction, because I'm not familiar with them. But yeah, that's like, okay, like we've had discussions about like, you know, religion being used against people in the queer community. But we have to remind ourselves that there are a lot of queer people that are still religious and have beliefs, and they find that message of love and that thing to extend to all people. I have quibbles with that, but I'm not going to poo-poo on someone for their beliefs if they're fighting for the right causes. So, you know, I have my quibbles, and but the fact that she's fighting for people, especially in Brazil, where they're very religious, and fighting for trans rights and LGBTQ, I'm not going to poo-poo on that. I'm like, you go, girl.
Right.
All right, moving on is Leah Wathith. Lena Wathith is an actress, writer, and producer, made history in 2007 as the first Black woman to win an Emmy for a comedy reign. But rather than reveling in the historic win, Wathith, who identifies as queer, used her acceptance speech to deliver an inspiring message to her LGBTQIA family. The things that make us different, those are with superpowers. She said, Wathith often uses her spotlight moments to advocate for the LGBTQ community. Earlier this year, she wore a rainbow cape to the Met Gala, a bold statement in the face of the event's religious theme. Sweet.
Hell yeah. Good for it.
Yeah. Arshan Parsay, that's number 9. Arshan Parsay, I'm probably saying his name wrong. So all you bitches that are getting mad at me, I'm not good with words, obviously. That's why I do a podcast, because I'm bad with words. As a gay man who was the first, began secretly working to support members of the LGBT community in his native Iran. But in 2005, the queer activist was forced to flee his country, where homosexual activity remains illegal. Today, Parsay lives exile in Canada, where he has founded the Iranian Railroad for Queer Refugees, which supports and provides guides to LGBTQ asylum seekers from the Middle East.
There we go. Wow.
Nah, so that's pretty fucking awesome. And my last, there's 50 on here, but I'm only going to do 10. I'm going to remain in my lane. Michael Sam became the first openly gay football player to be drafted by the NFL in 2014. While his draft was historic first, same time the NFL was discouraging, obviously. I'm not surprised. He was passed from team to team and eventually found himself without a team. About a year later, after he was first drafted, Sam retired from the LFI, citing mental health reasons. The struggle highlighted the discrimination and homophobia so rampant in the sports world, but Sam has gone on to share his story and continues to champion for change.
That's got to be tough.
That kind of that really does highlight like a bigger problem where it's you'll find people who are deemed as different, and then you'll have like groups of people treat them as different, excommunicate them from society, vilify them among other people, create fearful narratives about them to the point of where it's life becomes unbearable for them. And it's so it's like they'll go out and break people just so that they can say like, oh, look how broken they are. But in reality, it's like the reason why they're broken is all the hate, all the attacks, all the false claims, all the bogus narratives. Nobody can, regardless of what your gender is, people are going to break under those conditions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry. No, there's nothing more toxically masculine than, the competitive world, and there's nothing that a toxically masculine person hates more than being outdone by a gay person.
Absolutely.
And so they're just going to be fucking cruel,
I mean, how many times some of the older ones among us, man, have been raised as kids, like, you run like a girl, or you toss the ball like a girl. Like, how many times?
Yeah, the ball thing. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, throwing the ball like a girl.
We grew up with Don Sherry saying things like, hand in those keys to your sister, kid. You're no good.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, my goodness. Like, it's just so gross. Yeah. And also, too, on the note of, so these people are in distress, and I felt it to a certain degree throughout my life. But they twist it, especially the richest, saying like they're really sad because they don't have Jesus and they're not living, they're infected with demons or, whatever it is. And it's like, no, we're depressed because people treat us differently. Like we're a subclass of human being. And it's very frustrating because we're just people and we just want to live our lives.
I'm going to have to cut in here, guys, because we're running against the clock and we get so much more to go.
I know. I'm sorry. I'll stop my rant. But I wanted everyone to be inspired this week to go and do some shit.
Right, thank you, Ellen.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Time for things to make you go,
So I came across this one, and you guys should all get a laugh out of it. The average erect penis length has increased 24%.
What?
Nice.
Scientists have no idea why. Studies suggest
24%.
Usually, when you see like a dirty picture or something like that, but it's more than 24%.
How do they get these numbers? I want to know how they calculated this.
I need every percentage I can get.
Scientists suggest sedentary lifestyle environmental changes may have led to an erect penis length to increase from 4.8 inches to 6 inches between 1992 and 2021.
It probably has nothing to do with all the hormones they pump into our food.
It's those Swedish peanut pumps. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I just think that people aren't satisfied as easy anymore, and so we got to up our game.
Got to go in deeper into the problem.
Currently, the scientists do not know why erect penis sizes are getting longer, though they have a few theories. They theorize that there are global environmental causes, which may also be associated with boys, and in brackets, and girls, going through puberty far earlier than in previous generations. Notably, they also suggest that a sedentary lifestyle could be leading to hormonal changes that increase penis length.
So the less active you are, the more sedentary you are, the bigger dick you get?
Well, I guess you
God, I've been going at this gym thing all wrong.
What, you are?
Not to start a conspiracy here, but like they pump like cows and chickens and everything else we eat full of hormones so they grow as fast as freaking possible. And that ends up in our bodies. It's not to sound like anti-vax or whatever, but you would think that they'd have studies at least focus on some of the crap that we're eating that's causing kids to go into puberty earlier.
Yeah.
Other than it's like, life's just changing. It's
But we need hold on. But what are the lifestyle changes that lead to the? I need to know this information. What are the lifestyle changes?
I need to find out more for
the audience.
How does this happen? Tell me.
Friends young. For me, is I guess too old. I'm too old now. It's a lost cause.
It's like increased from 24% to 48% to 60%. Get out of here, people.
The study examined 75 different research papers published between 1942 and 2021, which reported erect penis measurements in a total of 55,761 men.
Wow.
They made sure to only include the studies where scientists were doing the measuring versus patients self-reporting.
Yeah, because,
That was like a couple inches. I mean,
there we go. It's like
it's cold in here. It's cold. Okay, it's
mystery solved. Everybody's doing bottom measurements instead of top.
And in studies where measurements were taken after pelvic surgery, the standard paper found in particular an increase in the average erect penile length in men from 1992 to 2021 that held across several geographic regions and subject populations. So, Bentley, if you were born before 1992, you're screwed. No help.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Hold on. 1992, isn't that pretty much when like YouPorn started coming on the scene too?
Oh,
that used to be like
Plot thickens.
People start rubbing one on and end up stretching it.
maybe all those
kicked off the air.
Maybe all those ads are telling the truth. I don't know, man.
Yeah, there is some hungry nymphomaniac about 3 miles away.
You gotta stop. It's like so much for like the penis pill industry. Like you just gotta sit on your ass and eat fried chicken, you'll get a big dick.
There might also be something to the idea that larger penises are, for lack of a better term, in vogue, in fashion, right? So there might be also something about the larger average phallus being bred into the species as well. Men with larger penises get to reproduce maybe more than ones without them. So maybe that's the case too, right? Down the road, we don't know. But down the
maybe
road, also in 100,000 years or so.
Like with porn, like the digital, because porn is everywhere now, that and people are seeing more. Like I'm just going off your theory, Kevin. Like we're seeing a bunch of dick, and I want to have sex with the big penis to make babies. So it could be that.
Osmosis. Okay.
I am not a scientist, by the way, people, but I just have theories that might work.
I mean, technically they're hypotheses, but anyway, sorry.
I didn't really have enough research on it, but I was told, like, over in Haiti and stuff, where how they enlarge their lips and they put stuff in them to enlarge the
rings.
Yeah, the rings. Well, I was also told, and I haven't done the research on it, that they also put, as they age, starting from when they're toddlers, they tie like rocks to their penis and have it hang down, and that's how they get it so big.
Isn't that a subcategory on Pornhub?
Older, they put your stuff on to strengthen it or to lengthen it.
So you got to start them early, guys.
You got to start early. You heard it here first, guys.
I mean, all the Christians are going to freak out about health class now. I mean, that's just, jeez.
I'm just thinking, it's like some poor kid's like, I wanted a Game Boy for Christmas, and I got penis rocks.
Oh boy!
Oh, heavier than mine.
Yeah, I've got the deluxe model. I've got granite. I got marble. Oh yeah, your parents are rich. You got marble rocks right there.
You got marble.
Mine's just a bag of sand. This is bullshit. This is bullshit.
I wonder what, is there a certain type of rock you have to use? Like, is there like certain rocks that are better for penis lengthening than other rocks?
Magic crystals, yeah. The magic ones.
Research it.
Crystals. This is something Gwyneth Paltrow and Goop is going to put on her site.
Oh my God!
Don't invoke that. Don't bring that in reality.
Oh, thank you so much, Don, for that. Always good for a laugh. All right, Troy. Make it short, my friend. You get 15 minutes.
I know. I'm almost wondering, do we want to just cancel me for this week and then go to Brent, and then that way we're actually on time for the speaker?
Okay, sounds good to me. Let's do that then. Brent Lee, I guess it'll be your turn, my friend. You got another brilliant moment for us?
I do. Let's see here. So I don't know if y'all did y'all see the Grammys?
No.
Okay, so there's this music thing where they
picture of how much I care about the Grammys.
I know. So there's this musical thing in Madhu that they give out awards to people who did the best musics, and they call it the Grammys. And this year, what they did was
hold on a second. If they do the Grammys, you're going to come up with some kind of story about how the Christians panicked about the Grammys, right?
Well, sort of. This is
like clockwork every year.
Yeah.
So,
yes,
so
right.
Granny's complaining about the Grammys. Gotcha.
Right. Yes.
Pretty much.
It's the Super Bowl halftime came early this year with the Grammys.
Oh, there we go.
And what ended up happening is, and so it's this dude Sam Smith, right? And he's got the voice of a goddamn angel.
He does.
And he's did
pretty
right.
Too. He's pretty.
Awesome. He's just an excellent everything. Anyway, but he so he did this whole. One of his big hits is called "Unholy," right?
Oh boy, let me get comfortable for this.
So yeah, in keeping in on track with the unholy theme, everything was devil stuff. It was all devil. He had devil horns coming out of his hat. Everything was red on the stage. A trans woman. Oh shit, Petras. Kim Petras was doing. She was in the cage. She's a trans woman who is also phenomenal, and she did. They both kind of did that song "Unholy," and it freaked everybody the fuck out. They're all losing their goddamn gourds over it, right? And right, and so this is sort of an extension, I want to say, of that, right? And so that happened on the Grammys. So then, and then after that, then the Super Bowl happened, which was nothing. Nothing happened at the Super Bowl. It was just what's her name? Rihanna, thank you. And she was wearing red, and the other people dancing around her were wearing white. Well,
she had a wardrobe malfunction.
No, kind of. She was pregnant, so she couldn't really have. She had a bet.
She was kind of sexualizing her pregnant body, but that she's a performer, and
it was part
that's
of
what she
dance.
does.
Yeah, exactly right. But she was wearing red, and all the other people, and there was this big baggy sweatsuit kind of thing, right? And everybody else was wearing big baggy white sweatsuits, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody kept saying, and this was multiple articles that I read this through because I read a lot of Christian articles because I hate myself. But
you are a masochist, friendly. I know you are.
I mean, it's funny. They're funny. Anyway, so they were all dancing. They kept calling them fallen angels dancing around a satanic figure, right? So it was sort of just this whole Satan thing has kind of just kept going, right? And so I just found today, I guess it was a couple days ago, 2 days ago, there was this a clip of Alex Jones, no less.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I know, right? And he is basically, and it's everything I used to believe, and I know, but I actually did used to think all this stuff. But it's so funny if you think about it, because the main thing, over the past couple of years, a lot of the people that have done the satanic imagery, they have all been LGBTQIA plus, right? And so they're being attacked by a very specific group of people constantly, right? And the only thing they got to be let me fire back at them is fuck with them, man. Fuck with them. Let's dress up like Satan because fuck those guys. That's what this is. That's what all of this is about. Is they act like it's, oh no, they're actually worshiping Satan. No, they're not. They're just fucking with you, man, because you're stupid. And you're mean.
It's all satire. Like,
yeah.
they don't
the only people that actually
Satan.
believe in Satan are Christians. I mean, even Satan.
I mean, us queer folk are the new heavy metal. People like when like Iron Maiden came out and they had all like that devil energy. It's all the queers now.
And I'm sure the Christians were fucking with them back in the day, and they're just like, "Hey, here's a fuck you right back, bro." You know, like this. That's what they're doing. They're just fucking with them, and they're too stupid to know it. You know, and so, that brings us to our clip for today. Okay. And so this is Alex Jones, and he is on some kind of. I'm not gonna advertise the show. He's on some stupid fucking show with some guy with an American flag hat.
I thought you were going to say he's on cocaine and Red Bull, but it's
probably that
also.
too, and some vodka.
Yeah, meth probably. Yeah.
I heard the movie Cocaine Bear is based on Alex Jones.
I'm going to go see that with my family this weekend. I am so excited. It's going to be stupid fun.
I'm so glad that we've gotten into like the movie making where we're just like, let's be stupid. Let's be stupid.
That's what I want. I want stupid.
Santa Claus can kill everybody. That's cool. That's cool. What? You're weird. Here we go.
I've been a Christian since I was young, born again when I was younger, but been worldly, had a lot of problems. I'm not perfect. But I got to tell you, it happened to Mark Dice. It happened to me. It happened to a bunch of other people I talked to. Before you're offered a national TV show, before you're offered a major record deal, they get you in a room and they say, listen, we want you to reject Jesus Christ and pledge yourself to Lucifer. And it was an off-record meeting with me when it happened. It happened twice. Mark Dice tells the story because it wasn't an off-the-record meeting. It was with the largest reality TV show production company out there. And it happened to Mark Dice. When he told me about it, I believed it because it happened to me. It's happened to Eric Muller, Mancal Muller. It's happened to a bunch of other people I know. And you're sitting there in the meeting with people in a high-rise building around an office table, and you're like, are you kidding? They're like, no, we're very serious. And we need you to reject Christ and pledge yourself to Lucifer. And I tell viewers that story, 20 years ago.
No, Alex Jones is saying, so it's got to be true.
No, that really happened.
I mean, 4 people said it. So,
and he said it.
A bunch of, like, he names one person, then he says a bunch of people. It's like,
guys, we just stumbled upon the secret to get this podcast to go like mega viral. Let's say it right now. We reject Jesus. There we go. Finally, just send us the contract. Send us the contract at Left Valley.
Exactly.
I just want to say that I do believe in a 2,000-year-old Judaic zombie that's going to come back and kill all of you for not liking the same things that I like. So, hallelujah. I've been born again.
It's so weird, too, because they're like, oh, man, Satanists are gross. They drink blood. And I'm like, what the like, Jesus told you to drink blood. What is wrong with you guys?
That's your ritual. That's your freaking ritual every Sunday to drink blood.
What the fuck, man?
And isn't it one of the grossest things? I mean, I didn't think much about it at first when I first, became an atheist and all that. But now every time I look at it and say, you need to be bathed in the blood of Christ, it's like, God, that's just so creepy and icky.
That's so gross.
It's like Stephen King's Carrie or something like that.
It's the elevator scene. Yeah.
It makes me think of Lady Bathory, like, when she would like bathe in the blood of her victims and stuff. Like, I'm going to get eternal youth. It's the same shit. It's just that they're going to get eternal youth in heaven.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's like, in essence, it's like, they'll come back and say, well, it's allegorical symbolism. But at the same time, you still worship a human sacrifice.
Yes.
Like, it's like your entire faith is based on a human sacrifice that was needed because a talking snake told a woman to get a guy to eat an apple.
Yeah. It's a dietary advice from a talking snake in a magic garden. That's a old Bible premise right there.
Yeah, it's
and a God that's like, oh no, I can't just forgive people, okay? You murder something? Let's just get something out here to murder, and then maybe I'll think about it. Like, what the fuck is wrong with everybody?
I've talked to so many Christians that they look at you and, without blinking an eye, say, yeah, there's got to be a blood atonement somehow.
Why? I don't understand. I forgive people all the time. I don't do blood sacrifices. I'm just like, I forgive you. That's what I do. And I move on.
Helen, have you tried forgiving people with blood? I mean, it was twice. I'm pretty sure.
I just got this vision of, it's like, son, I know you're sorry for breaking the plate, but we're going to have to sacrifice the cat, so we really know you're sorry.
I was thinking like a car accident.
Mr. Twinkles, come here.
No, it's cool, man. No, we don't have to call the insurance company as long as you murder your child, right? The fuck no. Okay? Yeah. I will not call the insurance company.
I'm just going to throw a used tampon on people and say, you forgive me?
That's what I need to do every month.
There you go.
You're forgiven. Someone bumps into me at the grocery store. They say sorry. Boom. You're forgiven.
Well, just give me a finger. Can you just splat some finger?
May the spirit flow through you like it did this tampon.
That's exactly.
No?
God. Imagine. Oh my God, that's so gross and terrible, but kind of funny at the same time.
Yeah, but the great thing about a tampon is it's got that string so you can whip it around like one of those little pole things.
Yeah.
Forgive everybody.
Yeah.
Get rid of that flag person in the church with the twirly baton. Just get like a little tampon flying around.
Spatic.
Yeah,
church can have a
you
splash
can use it as a tea bag. You know, it's got.
That's what vampires do. That's how vampires make tea.
Yeah,
that's their favorite kind.
Tea bag.
Oh God. Thank you so much for that, Bradley.
We live in a crazy world.
Really?
I'm
crazy. Let's take a quick pause, and when we come back,
really messed up.
Let's take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll be talking to Professor Edwin Hodge, sociologist, and we'll be talking about the whole incel phenomenon. So stay with us.
That friggin' bonkers.
And I'll tell you another thing about Edwin. Oh, hey, there he is.
Oh, one second, real quick. I gotta.
Professor Hodge, how are you doing, good sir?
I'm living the dream, thanks. How are you?
Oh, always a pleasure to have you aboard. We'll put you on top here because you're important.
I'll be right back. I'm going to do
I just gotta look at
break.
you up there now.
There's the story. Oh God. Oh.
Well, you get a little fake hand so I can just like lift this up and it shows up on your screen. We'll time it. Whoa. Okay, 8 more hours of practice and we got this.
We'll get this.
Professor Hodge, it's always a pleasure to have you on board. I've got a quick question for you because you're part of academia and all that. We were talk about an article today. We were talking about it, but something just came out about the rate of suicide amongst especially young women has apparently jumped substantially. And I was wondering if you, in your profession, or one of your colleagues, could speak on the subject. Who would you recommend?
Among my colleagues.
Well, I don't know if yourself you could speak on the subject as a sociologist, but I know if not you, one of your colleagues maybe would be very versed into what's happening with women.
Unfortunately, we're actually in kind of a weird situation. So I can't. It's outside of my area of expertise. But the person who I would have suggested you speak to passed away suddenly a couple of months ago, and we have no one in the department that replace her. So. Unfortunately, outside of my it's outside of my area, and I have no one else to suggest to you.
That's fine. I mean, I thought you work at a university, so I thought I'd ask you. You never know till you ask, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we'll try to find somebody because I think what's the subject that we're talking about today about the whole incel thing is tied into a lot of things.
I think so too.
And young women facing depression and stuff like that, and high rates of suicide is one of them. And I think it's a subject that is not getting a lot of talk and should, because I think it's really, really scary where a lot of these young men are being led into at the hand of some very unscrupulous people that have no problem trying to make a buck off the feeling of these young men.
Oh yeah.
So
doing a quick Google and YouTube search, which is always extremely dangerous. I searched Canadian incels and then just put a timestamp within the last couple months to try to see if I can't find anything that's in the news so that I can stay on topic. and there was something about a Canadian Punjabi cell or East Indian or Hindu cell that like just did a terrorist attack. Is that actually a thing, or like just the way it was covered, it just looked like fake news?
Yeah, I've not heard of this.
No, me neither.
Okay. Yeah, it's like there was like 2 or 3 videos on this, and it's like, oh, well, that's really interesting. But it's like you're watching the video, and it's just like it's almost like you would get epilepsy from all the flashing that they have on the screen, trying to make it look like a real news organization.
Ooh.
But it's like it just looks completely fake. But
that's like the right wing's bag. That is the right wing's whole bag.
Yeah,
pretend to be news.
Yeah, pretty much.
It really is. I was telling Dawn earlier this week, for example. I remember having this conversation with these people that were anti-LGBTQ, and they will talk about these people are attacking the children, and then they started stating the College of Pediatrician, the American College of Pediatrician. And when you hear that at first, you say, "Wow, the American College of Pediatrician." You tell me the doctors are on the side of the church and all that, or anti-trans and all that. But when you and most people, that's where they stop, right? And when you talk to the average Joe, this is where, wow, the American College of Pediatrician, wow, they gotta know what they're talking about. But once you Google what the American College of Pediatrician is, you realize it's a right-wing lobby group.
Oh yeah,
it's not the American Association of Pediatrics.
Yeah.
Right? That's the difference.
It sounds similar. Yeah, it's the pregnancy center method.
That's exactly it.
That's what they count on. They count on people just not researching any further into it. And they look at you with a straight face when they tell you these things. So unless you actually know, and I remember having that conversation with that woman, and I called her on it. I said, the American College of Pediatrics is not the real thing. And then she just quickly just disappeared, right? It's like, oh, it's awful. It's awful.
I feel like
say some of this for the show, shouldn't we?
Sorry?
Are we live on the air yet?
No, well, we're not. We're recording, but we're not live on the air.
Oh, okay. Or sorry,
we're recording.
I feel like I constantly have to explain.
We never did a welcome back, so I'm
No. We're about
once you hear the applause, then you know that's the key.
I'm ready for this. I can do this.
Like, I'm not going to be eating on camera. I'm just having my snacky snack.
Hassan does it all the time. You're good. It's all right.
Listen. I'm more professional. Okay, I'm a lady.
I am absolutely.
Years ago,
I have no idea what I'm doing.
Years ago, when we did a show on when we started legalizing marijuana, so all of us decided to smoke a joint before the show, except for Nancy at the time. So one of us had to stay sober, and during the entire show, you can hear me eating chips.
Nice. That was one of the best shows ever, too.
I was so lost. I was so lost on that show. Like,
we should do that again sometime.
Yeah, because I don't even smoke weed
if you want me to smoke weed before a show.
What you're saying?
Why not?
It's
not. You're in Florida. I'm sorry.
No, I'm legal. I have a medical marijuana card because I have nerve issues, so I am legal.
This is the line I use now, right? I said, you really should complain about your life. There's actually people living in Florida,
That's why I'm always like, I live in
compassion.
Florida.
Eat all your vegetable there, Junior. Don't you know there are people in Florida right now?
There's people that have Ron DeSantis as a governor.
That right there, yeah.
One of my students.
All right, we can start now. I've got my snack.
Yeah, sir.
All right.
Just wait for me.
I just love that song from the show Big Mouth. Like, anything goes to Florida. Come on, baby, do your works.
Except that it doesn't. But yeah, okay.
All right. Stop interrupting me, you guys. You guys are always doing that. All right, perfect. Recording in 3, 2. All right, welcome back. Our returning champion is Professor Edwin Hodge of the University of. Oh my God, is it? It's UBC, right?
It's UVic.
It's
UBC's insecure little brother.
Yes.
The letters are similar. That's
Let's try that. Take two. Okay.
They're literally an ocean apart, or at least a causeway, or a strait.
All right, welcome back. Our returning champion is Professor Edwin Hodge of UVic. He's a sociologist and he's a snappy dresser and a snazzy dancer. Professor Hodge, thank you so much for coming back on the show. God, I can't be. Oh,
pleasure. Should we start another wave? Screen for screen. It never looks good.
Professor Hodge, maybe you'd be so kind to give us a quick background as to who you are.
Who I am? I am a sessional instructor, professor in the Department of Sociology at UVic. I'm also a research fellow at the Center for Global Studies at UVic. And primarily I study right-wing extremism, radicalization, and conspiratorial ideology.
Yes, and you obviously become one of our favorite guests as well. Professor, I wanted to bring you on the show today because I wanted to talk about the whole incel phenomenon. There's been a lot of things going on in the right-wing politics, and I feel it's a subject that is not explored deeply enough, and a lot of people are kind of glossing over. So I thought I'd bring in an expert to say, well, maybe you'd be so kind to maybe you start explaining to us what's an incel and how did that all start out, and what the hell is the deal with these guys?
Yeah, so who they are is really interesting. So these days it's easier to think of incels as adherents of a particular kind of ideology, an ideology that at its core is profoundly misogynistic. It is anti-feminist. It is, in some cases, also coupled with racism, ableism, transphobia, homophobia. You name it. You'll find some cluster of incels that buy into this. Who they are? These days, it's largely young men. Usually under 30 years old, although again, there's movement. But I mean, where it came from, it started online, and it started in a message board, I believe, by a young trans woman who was talking about her challenges in the dating world, and it was almost a support group. It actually started in a fairly positive space, and then like all good things, was invaded by trolls and let's call them ne'er-do-wells, and it began to twist and change over the years.
What is a ne'er-do-well?
A ne'er-do-well, a person who never does well.
Oh, okay. I like that. I'm going to use that from now on. You're fucking ne'er-do-well? Get the fuck.
Yeah, old-timey term. It means you're basically no good.
That's awesome.
I think you just described my entire life in one word.
I love it.
Yeah, but you have a point going for you, Kevin, that you're not a misogynist.
Although, you know what? There are some people that have called me that before, which is mind-blowing, but, I guess it's a question of perspective. So this phenomenon of these young men, how do I describe them? I mean, they're young men. They're angry, and they feel they're letting that the world is going by them without any regards for their well-being. Am I correct into assuming that's pretty much their case?
Yeah. So there's an element of social alienation, right? So a lot of these are young men. So let's sort of set the stage, right? These are young men who have come together in various spaces online, and the sort of unifying belief system that they have is that there is something fundamentally, right, like just immutably wrong with them. So they'll claim that it's things like they have bad genetics, or that they are just monumentally ugly, or there is some other usually physical. They would think of it as like a physical disfigurement or deformity. I mean, I've seen some of these guys complain that their Adam's apples are too big, and so that is why they can't get a date. They're
that
large.
was a problem.
I'm sorry?
I didn't know that was a problem. All the people I've dated, I didn't really think about their Adam's apple.
No, I often
all
Adam's
I can say
apple
is if I can get married looking like this, maybe they're just a-holes.
I totally date you, but I mean, can you do something about your Adam's apple though?
Yeah, can you just make it a little less bulbous? Just a little less.
Hit it with a hammer a few times. It'll be
Tuck
fine.
it back there. Come on.
It's like a retro. It's like retro phrenology, right? Just hit your head until these
wear
guys.
A scarf all the time. You just cover it up with a scarf. That'd be great.
Yeah. So these guys are bound by this sense that there's something fundamentally wrong with them. Now, from the outside, most of it is there's nothing wrong with them at all, right? Like you'll see guys who are who think that there's something wrong with them because they're overweight, or they perceive themselves to be overweight, or they think that they're too pale or too dark or too hairy or too not hairy. But that is just sort of the starting ground, right? Like from there, they move into this sort of deeper level of animus, right? So it's not, so one, they acknowledge or they believe they have this thing that's wrong with them, right? But then they take it one step further and they say, and as a result of this, I can't get the kind of attention that I want from women. And that's their fault, because women are shallow, women are materialistic, women are irrational, and they can't handle our superior logic or whatever. And so what we see is both alienation from society, right, from community and their surroundings, but also a sense of what we might call grievance politics at play, right? They feel aggrieved, right, that they feel the world owes them something, owes them a partner, owes them status by virtue of their masculinity. And when they inevitably fail because of, I would argue, their personalities, they externalize that sense of failure onto women as a social class.
So my first question is, when you said these men describe themselves as having some kind of handicap of some kind, is that just as an excuse, or is that something that the some standards of beauty, I guess, for men has been imposed upon them by society at this point?
I actually argue it's a little column A, little column B. But one of the things we've noticed sociologically speaking is in way back in the long ago, right? Like in the time of the boomers and the Gen X folks way back in the day. Conventional.
Hey.
Yeah, that was fucking weird.
I take umbrage with that, sir.
So sorry. I don't know my audience.
Okay, boomer lady. Okay.
Okay, Zoomer Brent.
So in the long ago, there was let's say sort of less pressure on men to conform to sort of narrow standards of beauty. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But one of the big reasons is men could find partners back in the day pretty easily because it was harder for women to live independently, right? So we're talking like in the 1970s, women in the U.S. couldn't open a checking account, couldn't get a mortgage, couldn't get a loan, right? They needed their husbands or fathers or partners' permission and signature. So
in the 70s, it was
yeah.
like,
Oh yeah. Yeah, you couldn't have a credit card until like 1978. Yeah.
Holy good goddamn! I'm sorry. All right.
Oh no, I mean,
I had
like,
no idea.
It blows people's minds that it's just like, oh my god, it was like that long. Yeah, like
this is one of the reasons it blows my mind when I hear a young woman today that says, I don't want to vote. It's like, girl, your grandmother couldn't vote. I mean, it's like you need to just because of that.
So I was like, you mean the 20s, right? The 20s? Like H.H. Holmes is doing his thing, right? That's Jesus.
Yeah. So back in the day, you could expect the sort of guys didn't really feel they had to buy in, right? Because they had other things that they felt they could offer. But as social roles change, as women are increasingly empowered, as women are increasingly able to live their own lives, be financially independent, even like raise a family outside of a sort of a traditional nuclear family kind of thing, a lot of men have felt like they actually have to engage in that sort of competition to sort of compete with other men to see who could be the prettiest. One of the fastest growing areas of cosmetics is men's cosmetics, right? Like it used to be like tens of millions of dollars. Now it's billions and billions and billions of dollars. Sephora has a men's section now. Yeah, like it's dope. I go in there and get all my stuff.
Well, like, I mean,
Oh shit! Okay.
capitalism will follow the trend, and I think self-care and self-grooming is really important to people's self-esteem and stuff, but when you turn it into being an asshole, that's where it gets bad and fishy and weird.
I'm just thinking I don't feel too bad because my daughter made me get a manicure this week.
It's amazing. Manicures are amazing.
like
you should go get a pedicure, by
That's
the way,
awesome.
Troy.
If
Troy,
you've never had a
My daughter
pedicure-
gave me one.
no, get a pedicure.
Get a
Get your feet
professional.
done. It is amazing. I recommend everybody get pedicures. No matter
Actually, what I
Change your
think
whole
is
life.
funny is like if you watch really old shows, like manicures used to be a man's thing. Like it's a, and then it went out of style, and it came back in again. But
So this is one of the interesting things, right? Is that we know that standards of beauty, fashion trends, these change over time. But the problem with a lot of incels is what they do is they take contemporary hierarchies of attractiveness, contemporary fashion trends, and they render them, they make them ahistorical, meaning that they say, oh yeah, this is how it is today, and this is how it's always been. And so these are immutable. So women have always been after the chads and the giga chads, right? They've always been after the dude that's 6'4" and just jacked, even though we know that that's actually not true and has never really been true. But they turn all women into a monolith, right? Who all have some kind of group mind that they all women believe exactly the same things about beauty and men and relationships, and all beauty standards for men are immutable, permanent, can never be changed. And if you have a blemish, perceived or otherwise, you're automatically out of the running, and that's unfair. And therefore, society owes you something. Right?
Or if you are typically attractive, the Chad, you're financially, you have the money to get a girl, you're not, you don't have it in the physical marketplace, but you have it on the financial marketplace. And that's why you're getting laid, because you have the money, because she wants you for your, checking account.
Exactly. It's
Are those really new ideas though? Because like you'd see those narratives play out on television and movies, like all throughout the like 50s, 60s, up to the 90s and past or whatever. It's like it's almost like they can't tell the difference between like Hollywood and reality. It's
this is where things get a little weird. I mean, it's all weird, but this is where it gets weirder. So, as a sociologist, this is where I think things get a little weird. Like people believing weird things, I'm just like, yeah, it's a day ending, and why? But where things get weird with incels is they try to base a lot of their beliefs on science, right? So, there's been a number of studies, psychology, sociology, and others that have shown that. Statistically speaking, generally speaking, if you're conventionally attractive by the standards of the day, you are more likely to have a higher than average income earning potential, right? Like, so you just make a little more money. It's easier for you to get a job. You get more likely to get callbacks. You tend to find it easier to navigate social situations. Yeah, okay, fine. But that doesn't mean that anyone who falls outside of the categories of conventional attractive, that doesn't mean that they don't get those things, right? But incels sort of eliminate that, and they just say, yeah, look, the 10% of people that occupy this top echelon, they're the ones that are getting all the girls, right? They're the ones that are hooking up. And then they look at things like there was just a really shoddy poll or survey that came out of like Plenty of Fish or OkCupid or something back in the day that said that there was like 10% of users are getting access to like 90% of the women that are on the, like, it made no sense. It was a bad study, but they've taken it and said, oh, well, it's basically science at this point. So scientifically speaking, we're never going to end up with the partner that we want. And to be clear, the partner that they want is always considered the most conventionally attractive. If you said to someone like, how about you just hook up with someone, meet someone, and get to know someone that you like, that matches your interests, that have the same hobbies, they'd be like, nah, this is what I want. And they have, the Stacy ideal, and they won't.
Yes, the Stacy.
Stacy.
Extremely shallow, but hateful of women who they see as shallow.
So this is where you get that guy, he looks like a couch potato melting, and he says, "Yeah, that girl ain't hot enough for me."
Yeah, it's that old meme of the neckbeard who's looking at a picture of like Mia Kunis or whatever, and being like, she has sharp elbows, 2 out of 10, would not date. And it's like, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess
it's also
that's
too,
a way to protect themselves, right?
Like, it's also like, I've seen it. They use like a eugenics argument.
Yeah.
Like, like skull shape and jaw shape and body shape. Like these are the things that are holding me back, because of like, they use like a eugenics argument that there's some people that are better and some people that are worse based on like just the way your genetics are.
Yeah, Hitler would have killed me. So
So it's gross. It's really, really gross, because they're just adopting those, talking points of like, it's just because you're genetics that you're bad, and it's it's terrible.
Yeah. Like, they grab onto people other ways too, though, because like I remember when like Proud Boys was like a brand new thing in Canada. It was I was just coming through a divorce. I found out just how unbalanced the family justice system is for men, and that was the wedge issue that Proud Boys was using to bring people into the fold. Yeah. And it's like, and I found them online, and it's like I'm listening to them, and it's like, and you start getting pulled down the rabbit hole a little bit, and then all of a sudden you realize, like, oh, wait a second, it's like, oh, that's not true. That's friggin' racist. That's like a slippery slope fallacy, and some people will back out, but other people get sucked right into it because they're upset because they do feel like a victim of the system, and I can't blame guys for feeling a victim of the family justice system, because it really is stacked in one direction. But it's these incels, they must be using these wedge issues to bring people in more than just capitalizing on their low self-esteem or shallowness. It's
the ideology is surprisingly comprehensive, right? So you will, as you say, you'll find people who feel that they've been shortchanged by the system. You find guys that find their way into like the men's rights movement, or even the fathers' rights movement, which, like, fathers' rights is a really handy avenue into men's rights, right? A lot of fathers' rights organizations are just men's rights light, and so they'll siphon them into this, and then through there, right, they're getting red pilled, right? This idea that they're being red pilled, and so they move into the red pill movements, or the men going their own way sort of ideology, right? The MGTOWs and the pickup artists, and then eventually they find their way to guys like Andrew Tate and others, and they sort of, the ones that sort of take all those ideas and then also internalize this deep insecurity about who they are, like what they look like. They also will tend to sort of move themselves into these more radicalized spaces, right? That's actually what we find these days is the process of radicalization is largely self-driven. So you don't find too many like old school recruiters showing up like, hey, you hate women, I hate women, let's go hate women together. Instead, it's just like you find something on YouTube or you find something online and it leads you down the rabbit hole.
I think it gets even deeper than that, because there's even industries. I remember, for example, this commercial just came to my mind here. I remember this old Doritos commercial where this guy walks on stage and he's graduating. He's got the cap. The guy looks like a slob. He's got like flip flops. He's got the hands full of Cheetos or whatever, or Doritos, and all of he kisses this woman. She got like the uptight librarian, and then she takes off her glasses and her hair goes out. I mean, she's like super hot, and all of a sudden this guy is like, I'm looking at this. This guy looks like a freaking slob. But the commercial says, the slob can get the hot girl. Yeah. And I think these kind of signals in popular culture are sent to men that you don't need to work on yourself.
Yeah.
No, you could just people should accept you for being a slob.
That's why Axe body spray sells so well, man. Like that's you know.
I mean, this is like a pretty standard sort of like thinking like a sociologist. Like everything around us is a sign or a symbol of it's an archive of meaning, right? And you look around and if you are a young woman in North American societies, right, and you are looking at the Avengers, or you're looking at sort of blockbuster shows, or even just like mainstream shows, there's pretty much like one, maybe two body types that you can are told, right, subliminally or otherwise. You're being told these are the ideals. But for men, it runs the gamut, right? It's everything from Chris Evans and Henry Cavill on the one hand to like guys like Jonah Hill back in the day, and
Chris Farley.
Yeah, and there's this huge gamut, and you end up with movies like where Jack Black ends up with like a supermodel, and so for men, there has always been this very wide range of like acceptable or a sort of a basically an implication that your looks don't matter. You too can end up with the supermodel. But that's starting to change, right? And so we're starting to see that it's narrowing, and men are now being like, "Oh shit, I don't look like Chris Evans."
Yeah,
guess I'm.
But it's kind
you got to be funny. That's the thing, man. That's why I got the whole bag. And,
it's
well done.
It's ironic.
My wife laughs at me all the time. With me, maybe sometimes, but it's.
But it's ironic because speaking of Marvel movies, one of the last ones that came out was one of the Thor movies, where there is a scene where Chris Hemsworth is essentially completely stripped naked, and he is like super buff and everything like that. And you hear a lot of on the right of people saying, they talk about impossible beauty of standard for women. That's an impossible beauty of standard for men. And he's not wrong when he says that. But it's almost like it's interesting that the same crowd of right-wing thinkers that are promoting let the market decide can't seem to help themselves to complain what the market is telling you have to adapt to the market at this point. See, you can't be that slob anymore. You have to market yourself to be or more appealing to women, and then all of a sudden they lose their goddamn mind.
Well, and then you turn into Tucker Carlson and start infrareding your balls.
Yeah.
So, as a way of being more masculine, and all this. It's all the same.
Well, I do.
I know, right? You're not tanning your balls, man. You're not going to get laid. It's science.
The thing that's so frustrating to me is like that's a perfect teachable moment for empathy, right? So you're looking at Chris Hemsworth stripped naked, and everyone's like, "See, unattainable beauty standard. Isn't it bullshit that like men are expected to adhere to this beauty standard?" And you're like, "Yeah, now and use your empathy." And extend that to what you've been doing to women.
Keep going. You're almost there.
It's like, you're right there. You're right there. And then they just walk it back, and they're like, see, women just like this is all they want. It's like, swing and a miss. Swing and a miss, buddy.
Oh, man. So is there a way for us to start, for lack of a better term here, walking this back for these guys to start understanding that, the tables are turning on them at this point, and this is what they're complaining about. How do we make them understand that this, not only that this is what women have been going through, but maybe if you don't want women to start judging you with that same standard that you've been judging them, how do we walk this down? How do we de-escalate this situation?
I mean, how do we make them see? You don't.
Sorry, I've been trying to explain the universal imperative to people all the time, and it's just not gonna. They don't get it. They don't get it. Sorry, what was
you don't make people believe anything. The thing to remember is that a lot of these folks, like the way that ideology works is it's not just a set of ideas that you just sort of plug into your brain, and it doesn't interact with anything else, and then you can just unplug it and move away if someone's like, what you're doing is dumb, right? And you're just like, yes, clearly it is defective. Insert ration. Yeah, it influences our core beliefs. It influences how we understand ourselves. So if you say like incels, like that ideology is toxic, it's brutal, like do you see what it's doing? They don't hear yes, I should also critically examine my ideology. They hear, you're saying I'm a horrible person. And so I have no reason to listen to you anymore because that makes me feel bad. So how do we deal with this stuff? We actually, we focus our efforts on younger folk. We teach things like empathy. We say, hey, young men, it's not wrong for young men to be compassionate and empathetic with others. There's a great program. It started in Alberta. It's called the Wise Guys program. And that's guys, Guyz, I think. Yeah. Anyways, there's a Z in there, but the whole program is designed to help young men navigate things like healthy body image, healthy relationships, nonviolent conflict resolution, how to have conversations with people you disagree with, how to talk about gender and sex and sexuality, how to talk about all these things in collaborative, constructive, positive ways. It's in high schools and middle schools. It's wonderful. These are the kinds of things that we need to do.
Yeah, this sounds like things like
not here in Florida,
or young men should be hearing from their parents, though. Like it's a. So I can't help but wonder. So basically, you're saying the parents are a lost cause. Let's try to get some decent teaching in front of the kids in a high school setting.
I wouldn't say that the parents are a lost cause, but like
focus more on the kids.
I mean, if you have to choose between two groups of people, right? You got a finite number of resources, right? We can't just invent more counselors or invent more, I don't know, people who monitor shit online. We have a finite number of resources, and we are faced with two groups of people. One group of people who are ideologically closed off, right? And they're locked in. All right. The mother in Winnipeg who this is like 15 years ago sent her kid to school with swastikas drawn on his arms, and when the schools wiped them off and told the kid that it was wrong, he went home. The next day he came back to school with permanent markered swastikas because the parents are just like, they're locked in. The school can't reach out to the parents and be like, hey, come sit in a class with me and let me teach you. What they can do is teach the kids and say, look, I'm not attacking your beliefs. I'm not attacking your beliefs. I'm not attacking your parents' beliefs. But let's talk about things like empathy. Let's talk about how can we think about other people? How can we put ourselves in their shoes? Does that help us understand them? It's ways of sort of inoculating people against bad ideas, against harmful ideas, without directly challenging them. Now, obviously, some people are going to be pissed off about this, right? I mean, there's a moral panic in the United States right now about teaching your kids to be good people. Apparently, that's wokeism or whatever. But I've tried, my whole academic life, I've tried talking with people who are like deeply invested in these kind of conspiracy theories. I have a far lower success rate getting through to them than I do to talking to their children and being like,
So how much do you blame social media? Because like it's no secret now. Like social media, they set up their algorithms to increase engagement, and nothing gets people more engaged than getting them pissed off.
Yeah.
So so that's almost like a breeding ground for incels, the way you're describing it.
Yeah. Because
it's getting people as triggered, as upset, as fearful, and reactatory, or I just made up a word, but either way,
it works. Reactionary, but reactatory works.
Yeah, it is reactionary. Thank you.
I'm rubbing off
it creates words. We were talking about that earlier, but no, it fosters this breeding ground for potential incel participants or whatever, or members. So, like, should there be any pressure put on these companies to, or do we just have to wait until somebody decides to hold one of these companies liable for allowing a group to get radicalized? It's kind of like what we see with Fox News right now. They were allowed to go forever with spreading fake news until like a company held them liable. Now they seem to be in a deep caca. But like, do we have to wait for the same thing to happen with social media, or is there anything else that we can do to kind of try to make the world a little bit less crazy?
Yeah, this is a real tough question, right? I mean, this falls into sort of jurisdictional issues as well, right? Like, if you're living in the United States, good luck regulating social media, right? Like, First Amendment pretty much allows you to say whatever the hell you want, short of like explicitly, openly advocating for violence. So it's really hard to sort of regulate this stuff. Although I will say, like, just as an umbrella, I walked away from social media in 2016. It was the best decision I ever made. It's just we know that people who are dedicated users of social media. So for older folk, ramps up their anxiety, ramps up depression, lowers the sense by which they believe that the world is a positive place. For young kids, we know that social media directly influences self-esteem, perceptions of their, of who the kind of people that they are. And as you say, there's big money to be made in angering people. In Canada, yeah, we can do things. There are some policies that I think could work. Certainly widening the scope of the CRTC to cover things like online content, making sure that like hate speech can't be permitted to thrive in digital spaces. But it's tough. I guess, the way I look at it is, I mean, social media has been around in one form or another for the last 20 years. Is it a fad or is it here to stay? If it's a fad, we got to ride it out. If it's here to stay, we actually got to start talking to kids about media literacy. Yeah.
I was going to say too, like, and the problem is like Reddit like took down their incel forum because there was, after Elliot Rodger, it was a whole bag of bad, but they just moved further into other parts of the web, like 4chan and 8chan and other social media, other media links, because if this is the stuff you want to find, you will find it. And like I can say, like, my son's 19 and it was basically us teaching him how to be kind to people, how to have compassion, how to have empathy, to think about what he's being told, and teaching them those skills, because you're not going to, I don't think, like, you can be a private company and you can crack down on these things as much as you want, but if you're not starting at the source with preventing young people growing up with bad ideas, it doesn't matter what we do online. That's we can help regulate it. I'm not saying not to regulate it and kind of keep that stuff at bay, but I'm saying that it has to start on an interpersonal level with these young people. Like, you have to talk to them and teach them the skills. That you're not born with, knowing all this stuff. Especially when you're a teenager, you got to kind of go through the process and learn these things.
I'm just going to jump in here and just to clarify for our American listeners, the CRTC, that's the Canadian equivalent of the FCC. So
it's the thing Eminem gets all mad at all the
That's
time.
right.
I remember
all the time.
And I'm going to do just some slight pushback here, Professor Hodge, on you, because we're talking here a bit earlier before we go into the social media here. We're talking about, sometimes it's better to be investing into the younger generation, but we're talking about incels here. They are the younger generation. So we can't really use that typical tactic of, well, the old people are set in their ways and eventually they'll go away, and then we can invest into the younger generation and change the world that way. So how do we use that tactic against a generation that's already in the young? They're already the young generation there.
This is where I'm going to offer a somewhat dangerous opinion. Free speech isn't untrammeled. There is absolutely no reason why a company should not, come down on these groups like the fist of an angry god and just smash them into brick dust. There's no reason why anyone should be convinced by the argument of, but my free speeches, I should be allowed to say this on Reddit. No, fuck off. There's no reason for that. And people, I often get pushback. Well, people say, well, fine, well, they'll just go underground. Good. It's harder to find things when it's underground. Like, the majority of young people are being siphoned into these things from YouTube, from Reddit and Facebook, from surface internet stuff. So if they get pushed underground, great. It's smaller down there. When you have at the high point of the Ku Klux Klan, 5.5 million Klansmen in the United States walking under the open sky at the Mall of America, right? Or the Malls of America, or whatever, the big reflecting pond in Washington. They're marching down there. Nobody, there's protesters, but they're doing it. What happened when the government cracked down on them? What happened when newspapers and publications stopped pushing their stuff? Yeah, they went underground, but you know what else they did? They fractured until by their nadir, they were like 50,000. It's a massive reduction. Same with like Proud Boys. Proud Boys they had Facebook pages. They had in Canada, they had rallies all over the place. Then Facebook said, "Nah, you're not on our site. You're not on our website anymore. Get off." Right? So they shut them down. Great. Well, now they're underground. They're still kicking around. Then Canada says, "Hey, Proud Boys, you're now a terrorist organization."
Yes.
They cannot organize anymore. Right? You take away those tools. I am very much opposed to the free speech fetishism that I see in a lot of sort of free thinking atheist.
It's just the marketplace of ideas, man.
You can't call yourself a capitalist and adhere to or call yourself a leftist and adhere to capitalist values, right? Like if you want to call yourself a progressive, stop using the logics of capitalism. It's a marketplace of ideas. Yeah. And the marketplace has controls on poisons and bad ideas, right? Like at the risk of going off on a rant, the best cure for illness isn't sunlight. It's fucking disinfectant and medicine. You actively and aggressively target a thing. You don't just pull it out into the sun and go, "Behold, sunlight, cure this problem."
I don't understand people that don't understand that. Like, free speech just means the government cannot keep you from saying something, and you can get thrown in jail. Free speech is not free from consequences. So I'm like, if you're acting like an asshat and you start spreading awful things online, and the company's like, "This is really bad for our brand, and this is really bad for people. Let's get rid of it."
Yeah.
Well, even in the capitalism like thread, right? It's like we still are like, "Hey, but you can't do a pyramid scheme." There's things that even capitalism's like, "Don't do that," because we know how fucking harmful it is.
Yeah.
And that it hurts people and stuff. And that right there is worse than it being okay and just everybody being allowed to sell their snake oil, whatever bullshit.
Yeah, I remember having this debate with our friend Seth Andrews of the Thinking Atheist about, should we? He's a proponent of you cure bad ideas with more free speech. And I said to him, this is the difference between our two respective countries, because, our freedom of speech is not the same as the American freedom of speech. And I said, but we just, for example, how do you cure a guy who's an anti-Semite by giving him free speech?
Giving him a soapbox.
Yeah. We went through an entire world war to determine whether Jews have the right to exist. Do we still need to settle that question? We don't need to revisit that. And I think that some of these ideas from these right-wing groups are coming back to haunt us again, because we're so prone to say, "Well, free speech, you have the right to say this, you have the right to say that." No, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe
an adage I was taught and still live by is, my right to swing my arms stop before it hits someone else's face. And that's how free speech should work. Like, you should have the right to say whatever you wish, to question, to criticize. At the same time, though, is like, if you doing that is causing someone else harm, or is causing harm to society, then guess what? Then you're abusing your right. And if you abuse a right, you lose a right. And I might be a little bit off, like, people might disagree with me with that or whatever, but it's in the sense...
It's an easier pill to swallow in Canada than it is in our friends down south in the U.S., right? Because in Canada, you may swallow that pill. My father told me the same thing, right? Your rights end where the rights of others begin. But in the U.S., you'll say, "You're not going to tell me what the hell I'm doing with my rights," right?
Yeah. I have the right to swing my arm, and they have the right to duck.
That's right. That's right.
Well, and like what you were saying about like the bad ideas are beaten by better ideas. I want you to keep in mind that Matt Dillahunty still debates like week after week about the morality of fucking slavery.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Is
right.
that one beat yet? What the fuck? When is that done?
Or look, it's 2023. I still have students that want to like debate me about men's rights ideology, and I have to say to them, like, do you know why we don't talk about men's rights ideology in like philosophy? Or because we had that debate in 1972, and it was found to be a piss poor idea then. Nothing has changed that, so why would we bring it up again? And like, I mean, yeah. So that's one of the reasons. Yeah. So in Canada, you're right. Like, we don't actually have free speech. That's not a thing, right? We have freedom of expression, and the preamble of our Charter of Rights and Freedom says you have the freedom to express ideas, to hold beliefs, blah blah blah. But the government has the right to infringe on those freedoms if it can be justified, and if doing so is in the best interests of everyone, right? It's called the peace, order, and good governance test. So the state can say, like, yeah, you have the right in your house to Heil Hitler and scream about how Jews are secretly colonizing the moon or whatever.
Space lasers.
Yeah, they're building space lasers.
Or there's Nazis out there. It's either Jewish people or Nazis that are on the moon. Like, it just depends on the
depends on which side of the moon you're on.
But like, to bring this back to like the incel conversation, is that so we're dealing with these young men that are being fed really bad ideas because they're feeling disenfranchised. They're feeling they're being left behind because of capitalism and being in the world moving forward, you know. And so I can kind of understand where they're feeling lost, you know, because we're, you know, queer people and women and people that are outliers, we're shouting like we just want to be treated like human beings. And then, like, you know, they watched Fight Club and took it as a documentary than a warning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you
they
know,
thought
so,
that it was a warning.
Yeah. So how do we help young men? I understand the education part on the empathy, and I think that's something that can be started just sitting around the kitchen table. But as society as a whole, how do we help these men, you know, grow up to be like compassionate, good human beings, you know, and not get sucked down that rabbit hole?
Yeah, this is the real challenge, right? So it you know, at a societal level, yeah, part of it is straight up. You change the education curriculum. You change the system. So in Canada, our education is at the province level, right? And province determines curricula for every public school. And even private,
I'm jealous.
even private schools have to abide by provincial curriculum, right? So yeah. So you basically say you go, like in BC, you go to Victoria to the Ledge, and you pass legislation that you know updates standards or whatever, and then the ministry figures it out and blah blah blah. It's a societal level thing. The other stuff is we have to start modeling good behavior. We also have to acknowledge that that a lot of the guys that are in these incel that have followed into this ideology, they're not victims, right? They've made a choice to be there. And so the idea of like, yeah, they're alienated, they're isolated. How long have women and queer folk been alienated and isolated in our society? Do they rent vans and mow down people in Toronto? No. So at some point we have to acknowledge that there is agency there. And so in some cases that means there has to be consequences for their action. Being socially ostracized, that's a consequence. Not getting a date, consequence. In terms of like, how do we change the system such that it's better designed or better, more optimized to like reduce the number of people that fall into these? That's actually where we talk about civic organizations. If you are at all interested, one of the most important sociological books that's come out in the last 30 years is called Bowling Alone. It's by a guy named Robert Putnam. Putnam made the argument. He said, you want to see why society has begun to fragment, right? Why it is, why it is that voter turnout has dropped, why we see a rise in alienation and isolation, why it is that it's so common that we can live beside someone for 20 years and not know their name. He says it's the decline of civic society, the decline of voluntary organizations, everything from beer leagues, beer sports leagues, right? Hockey, football, whatever sports Americans are into. It's the decline of those. It's the decline of things like the Odd Fellows, the Masons, the Knights of Columbus, Elks Lodge, Job's Daughters, Order of the Eastern Star, like fraternal and sorority, and the fraternal organizations and sororities that, I know the Masons secretly rule the world and they're all whatever, but
also the Illuminati.
Obviously.
And they're on the moon.
And probably Jewish.
Right.
The thing that these organizations also do is they bring people together from all walks of life, right? So a typical Masonic lodge in a community will have doctors, lawyers, tradespeople, laborers, stay-at-home dads, and folks who are unemployed. But they all come together, and in coming together, they begin to identify with one another. They actually begin to build ties of affective bonds, right? They begin to consider each other. It's as those organizations have disappeared, and yes, as church attendance has disappeared as well, it is also a social organization. As those numbers have declined, there are fewer and fewer spaces where people can mix with others that are unlike them, right? Social media is not going to be the replacement for that, because we edit our feeds, we tailor we tailor our communities, so we join together with like-minded folk, and we minimize the extent to which we talk to others. In my hometown, the Reform Party, so the Conservatives in Canada, the Conservatives and the NDP and the Liberal candidates for our riding all were in the lodge together. And they talk to one another, and they put aside politics to do things like fund hospitals and build, track and field stuff for the school. Those organizations are integral. And without them, we all run the risk of falling into these isolated spaces, and we become exceptionally vulnerable to radicalization.
But isn't that the fact of if we're and I'm not disregarding what you're saying here, but that void that's created by these groups missing, isn't that what is actually used by these artists like Andrew Tate, but also by the church to radicalize these young men?
So yes, in some cases, absolutely, right? Like, I'm not going to deny the role of, especially evangelical Protestant organizations in the United States, but that goes back to like the 1990s. Prior to that, the rates of radicalization within churches were quite a bit lower. And it's also important to remember that if we didn't have those religious organizations in the United States, you wouldn't have had the civil rights movement, right? Like, that's not an accident, right? The civil rights movement directly grew out of Southern Baptist churches. The principles of humanity and compassion, and like, I'm an atheist, right? I helped to set up anti-theist organizations in the past, and I'm telling you that, like, the church, religious organizations are just as important in social spaces as any other social organization that brings people together. Now, you're going to have churches like, the Catholics, sure, or the Baptists or the Anabaptists who are just like, let's burn everything to the ground and prevent women from having abortions and they have to have all the babies. But you also have organizations like the Lutheran Church down the street from me. The Lutheran Church down the street from me has a Black Lives Matter flag, a trans flag, a BIPOC and Indigenous people's flag, a missing and murdered Indigenous women's discussion group every night. It has openly and explicitly said, are you trans or queer? If you need a space, if you need sanctuary, you come to us. They march in all of the pride parades. They are constantly fundraising for the community, right? So you can reward that good behavior.
Like I would say,
I think the irony is the good and helpful churches and the ones looking to make a positive difference, they're not nearly as loud and in your face as the toxic ones.
You're not wrong.
And at the same time, is from the outside pointing in, is complicity is acceptance. Yeah. So it's like if you're not calling out these other churches for the sham that they are, then it's what makes you any better? Yeah. And so from like I said, the outside pointing in or looking in, but it's hard to tell them apart because they're not disagreeing with each other.
Yeah, I mean, again, not to hype the local Lutheran church down the street, but they actively call out other churches. Like that's part of how they see social activism working. But you're right. Like if we're looking at a large scale, religious organizations, we need to set them aside. In space, like Victoria's old and like kind of conservative, but like way more progressive than like probably the most progressive place in America. But so it's an island, right? It's literally and metaphorically, it's an interesting island.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not going to make the same argument in Lethbridge. It's a bit different. Lethbridge, for those, Lethbridge is like our Stone Mountain. It's like, it's real conservative, real racist.
So Florida.
Yeah.
It's in Alberta, which is not
like I have a whole state. Like it's just pockets of like centrist to leftists here, and it's all where the colleges are.
Yeah.
Rest of the state, red, like red. Yeah. And when you live here, especially if you're a woman, you're a queer person, I have a trans child, I have a non-binary child, that's going up into the center of the state to go to pharmacy school, and I'm terrified because they're going to be 4 hours away and there's rights being taken away from them, and my brain is just like, oh my god, is my kid going to be safe? Even though they're 21 years old, that's where my brain goes.
I'm not saying that you should send them to Canada, but
no, I know. But
you should totally send them to Canada.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because I'm always like, maybe when you're done pharmacy school, maybe you should move out of state. Like, I don't want you to, but maybe you should.
Look, it's a real burden, but I speaking as a Canadian, we are willing to annex the Pacific Northwest.
I know. I think you should. Just absorb
Probably
it.
Alaska too.
Annex the East Coast and the West Coast and leave the middle.
Parts of the East. We'll leave you Jersey.
We're banning reading.
Nobody wants Jersey. But it's one of those things where when you're like, you feel that you're screaming into an empty tunnel half the time about, like, you're shouting like, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, and everybody's just like, it'll be fine, work itself out. It's like, it's not going to work. Nothing worked itself out. It wasn't like the civil rights movement worked itself out, because we're still dealing with racism in 2023. That's fun. It's just stupid.
Just read Du Bois, right? Read W.E.B. Du Bois. Read The Souls of Black Folk. Chapter 1 of Souls of Black Folk. You wrote that in 1903. Is anything different? No. But the thing to remember too about the United States is it's also very important to point out that the United States right now is in the grip of multiple moral panics. Right, they're overlapping, converging moral panics. Critical race theory, wokeism, all this stuff. This is not like, from an outsider's perspective, this is not normal. Like, this is an atypical historical moment. And so during moral panics, folks who sort of see through the panic, they tend to be pushed down pretty ruthlessly. Oh yeah. And I hate to sort of say this too shall pass, because I don't know if it will, but it is a very challenging environment to do progressive work. When simply identifying as progressive in these sort of moral panics automatically paints a target on your back.
Right. If you say that you're woke, which means if someone says I'm anti-woke, I'm like, oh, I'm not bigoted enough for you. That's the problem, And then you're trying to go into like a school board meeting where there's a bunch of people shouting about CRT, when you're just like, hey, maybe we could put money into computers instead of and furthering this educational thing rather than yelling about, CRT, which isn't even taught at the grade school level. So I don't know where we're debating it. So
it's not even taught at the undergraduate level.
Yeah, I know. But I'm like, okay, but like, that's the thing with these groups. And I know we kind of went on a different road, but like, it kind of comes back to that idea of people getting radicalized into these groups. Cause like you see a lot in the incel community where, the misogyny gets boiled over into racism and ableism, and the system is against them, and and like advocating for legalized rape, and that woman should be like, you get to buy a wife, all these different ideas, and it's just like, no, let's not do that. But that's the society they want, because unfortunately, change only happens when you actually get off your ass and do something. And they want things to be whatever they got going on in their brains.
Yeah. Well, and it reminds me, and maybe you can answer this, Edwin. Like there's this. I was just reading a book. I think it's the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. I'm not sure. It's one of the ones I read. But like they're talking about like this test that was done, this experiment that was done where it was like all blue-eyed kids. Like you know what I'm talking about? And they like gave them, they said, oh, you guys are special. And all the other kids are not special.
Yeah, blue-eye, brown eye. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so it was just like, and these behaviors are just like, it's like once you put things like that, like those lines on the sand, and say like these people are better than those people, like it gets like, and it's just going to keep going, right? Like if we say if with the conservatives, like, or the people that are into this stuff, we island them off, right? We're like, okay, we're all going to leave and they're all going to be on their fucking island. Right? They're just going to then divide their island based on eye color or whatever the fuck else they can figure out to divide themselves. This keeps going.
This is we do this, like we are difference recognizing machines, right? And so one of the things you could say about humans is that at a very young age we recognize differences, right, between the self and other, between mom and dad, between people with different colored skin. But society is what tells us how we ought to treat those differences, how we ought to value those differences. Mm-hmm. We see the same thing in left-wing circles as well, right? Like the number of times that, obviously I don't have anything in my hair today, but usually when I teach, I have spiky hair or I'm rocking a faux hawk, and I'll get people who say like, how can you be a leftist when you're taking care of your appearance, you're putting product in and all this? And I was like, I'm a progressive because I hold progressive economic and social values. Mm-hmm. Like I vote for progressive parties. Like it has nothing to do with like how I style my hair. But we create these litmus tests all the time, right? It's part of just what we do. And so the question is like, how much weight do we give to that, and how far are we willing to go in the production of this kind of differentiation? And as you say, like, you wall some sort of reactionary folk off on an island somewhere, they'll do that. But the thing is, the rest of us would be doing it too, right? So we have to be mindful of that.
Part of the issues that I see is our culture. It always likes to group things either good, bad.
Yeah.
And it's so like when we see differences, it's either a good difference or it's a bad difference, and there's really no room for any shades of gray. So the question is like, how much do we want to point to society and say, you know what, maybe we need to change some of our mindsets if we're going to fix some of these problems. And
this is the heart of sociology, right? Like the very first essay I make students read is it's called The Promise. It's by C. Wright Mills, and it basically says exactly that. The world is gray, and we need to recognize that, but also recognizing difference. That's the heart of queer theory. It's the recognition that difference isn't bad, and that the binary way that we divide up the world it causes problems that we can resolve if we just widen our gaze a little bit, just widen our perception.
Professor Hodge, you've been very generous with your time, and we certainly appreciate it. I want to ask one quick final question before we let you go. It seems we have such a huge uphill battle ahead of us, and I find myself like the other day I was watching this show that's very popular. It's called Yellowstone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I'm struck when I watch the show how much of a commercial for right-wing conservatism, romanticizing of the cowboy lifestyle it is, and I'm thinking, do we even have it in us as a species to be able to have a progressive society when we keep being attracted to these conservative messages anyway? Is there a hope for us?
I mean, yeah. Remember that the NDP in Canada, right? That's like, what's the NDP in America? Communists. The NDP in America is like, imagine if Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez created a party, and everyone was like them.
And they went further left.
Yeah. The NDP started as the Canadian, was it the CFC, the Canadian Farmers Coalition, or Canadian? It was farmers who came together to build a party that gave us universal health care, and a series of progressive policies. We can look around the world and we can see examples from other countries that, you know, that they're doing things in different ways, and their people are happier, their people are better protected, right? Italy's union culture. So auto manufacturers like Ferrari, they're not in. They don't fight with their union. Their union sits on their board. They're right. Denmark has some of the happiest people on earth. They have the lowest number per capita of millionaires and billionaires on earth. They also have the lowest number of poor people because they do aggressive, progressive taxation and wealth redistribution. Right? They have incredible school system, incredible social safety nets. Like it's not like, can we build better worlds? They exist. They're out there. We just need to look at them, and we need to get the political and social will to enact those reforms ourselves.
I think also too, just because just the history of the United States, and also we are adjacent to like Cuba, who had a terrible communist system and had a dictator, and we're in, and then we're in the bullshit with China. That's another terrible communist system. So the American idea of communism is these the right wing form of communism, but they think it's left, and it's like, well, yes, historically, but we're not. But we've shown in other countries that a socialized system does work, and you can do a hybrid of socialism and capitalism. You can do a hybrid. It's fine.
All things being equal, I really like.
I know. I don't have a problem with it, but we need to start taking care of each other more, and then if we're taking care of each other more, things like incels don't happen as much because they don't feel isolated, and they have to join these terrible ideologies.
Yeah. One thing we didn't touch. Oh, I think Kevin wants to cut us off.
I feel that we just scratched the surface of this topic, and we could probably go forever here, but we are running against the clock. Professor Hodge, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. I really appreciate it. If people want to find out more about what you're doing and your programs, where can they find you?
Well, it won't be on social media. So you can actually just find me. I'm profiled all over UVic. Just Google Edwin Hodge UVic, or I run a Twitch stream, Sociocalypse, which I stream on Saturdays. I play video games and talk about sociology. I also have a sometimes maintained blog at WordPress called Sociology of the Weird, where I talk about strange beliefs that people have and how we can think about them sociologically. That's it. The last time I was on Twitter was like 3 years ago. So
it's a cesspool, so you don't need to be on there. It's a cesspool.
I'm trying Hive and Mastodon. We'll see.
Okay.
Professor Hodge, thank you so much for being on the show. But as usual, I got to have you say, hi, this is Professor Edwin Hodge of UVic, and I took a left in the valley.
Hi, this is Professor Hodge from UVic, and I took a left at the valley.
Fantastic.